So what you're seeing right now is a project that I plan on working on. What I'm trying to do is trying to create the prototype first. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what I've been working on like for the past week. So it turns out I didn't even talk about what I'm even making last video, right? I was talking about how I made this command prompt and all this, stuff, making all these systems. And I didn't even talk about the actual game and what I'm even making. So honestly, I'm more surprised that people actually watched the video because like I didn't even talk about anything. But yeah, I'm just gonna start out this video just by talking about what I'm actually going to make. And I'm currently making a 2D top-down Souls-like game where pretty much it's more focused on fighting challenging bosses with low health and a lot of repetitiveness, or that's the idea there. And this is a very not necessarily a large scoped game. I don't plan on working on this for like a year or two because my last project, or previous project before this one, or two projects ago, I worked on it for almost a year and a half. And I mean, yeah, this one is more low stakes, I guess. Now, the name of the project, I'm currently calling it Project Strike. I don't actually have an official name. So the code name for this project is currently Project Strike. And for now, we're just gonna call it Strike, okay? Welcome to our second Godot devlog. In today's video, we're gonna be talking about the art of attacking. Now, before we dive into today's topic, we're going to discuss about the actual project structure. Generally, there are two ways to create any project: inheritance and composition. I'm sure you've heard this quite a lot, but to give you guys a quick rundown, inheritance is the process of creating a new class based on an existing one. So if I have a base class called enemy, I can create a dummy class that inherits everything from it. So like health, attack functions, and whatnot. A good example of a game that actually uses inheritance is Minecraft. If you guys ever modded in Minecraft, you know that every entity in the game is derived by a main entity class. Project JJK, for example, which is a mod that I worked on in Minecraft, also uses inheritance. Composition, on the other hand, is the process of building objects using smaller reusable pieces. So instead of saying a dummy is an enemy, we say a dummy has a health component, an attack component, and a movement component. So these are all built on components. And so this is much more modular, which makes your game systems much more flexible. And if you guys want to know how to actually put this into practice, I'd recommend checking out Bitlytic's video on composition in Godot. So what methodology am I actually using for this project? And for this project, I'm going to be using a little bit of both, but primarily composition because I want to keep a lot of my systems flexible. From my past experiences where I made my projects focused more on inheritance, over time when your project gets really big, it gets much more difficult to work with because all these values are kind of in like a class tree, right? So Project JJK had almost around 40,000 lines of code, and a lot of times I had to spend more time kind of reverse engineering things to find out how to make other systems. Now, there are benefits to inheritance. I'm not saying inheritance is always bad, but in most cases, I would prefer to use composition. So in this project, we're going to be using a mix of both. And what I mean by both is I'm going to be using inheritance for simple relationships. So things that have actually like a tight relationship between one another, but it's not too complex to the point where it grows into a large class tree. And so, yeah, and other than that, we're going to be using composition for the rest. So how do we actually implement it into our game? The first three things that we need to think of is what's going to trigger the attack, what's going to detect if a player or an entity has been attacked, and how much health does that entity is going to have. And so if you think about those three things, we need to have three components: the hitbox component, the health component, and the attack component. And now to make this much easier, we can just use a debug draw to kind of draw out all the hitboxes and the raycast to see where this is actually hitting, and instead of trying to, just assume that my code is going to work, right? And once I created the visualizer and I was satisfied with the actual drawing, I went ahead and communicated the raycast to the hitbox component. Pretty much how this connection works is, like I said, through events. And so, for example, if a hitbox component was hit by a ray, then it will tell the health component, hey, you're going to need to take damage, and this is the value that you're going to take damage, and the health will go down. Now, if the health reaches 0, then the health component will communicate to the actual brain component, which I didn't mention it earlier, but the brain component is like the main component for the entity in my project structure that communicates through all the components that it has. And so the health component will tell the brain component saying that I took damage and I have also died because my health reached 0. And then the brain component will take that information and pretty much do anything with it. Yeah, and then so after creating that, we now have a fully working attack system. If we start adding animations to the player, we now have something like this. Welcome to our second Godot devlog. Welcome to our second Godot devlog. Oh yeah, I've been using Unity this whole time. All right, I'm gonna be real. So I started using Unity not too far back, or right after that video. I wanted to keep working on Godot, right? I was actually having fun. I mean, honestly, workflow wise, it doesn't really matter to me. Both of them are very simplistic in terms of the learning curve. Both of them have their quirks, and you know, I like both of them. But one of the main things that I've had issues with Godot was that it keeps crashing. Like, I have nothing there. Like, the editor itself just crashes. I don't know if it's a hardware issue or like a skill issue, but it just keeps crashing randomly. My current project in Godot does not have any tool scripts running in the editor. Honestly, I have no idea what's the reason for the crash. And this past week, I've crashed at least 6 times, right? And the week before that, I've crashed around, I mean, honestly, I don't know in the back of my head, but I crashed quite a lot. And it's just frustrating because it's just, I mean, I tried looking for solutions online, and people did offer some solutions because it seems like other people are also having this issue in Godot where they just randomly crash. But none of them seem to work for me. And so at this point, I'm just like, well, okay, what can I do? Like, it's not like I can just fix this randomly. I don't even know what it is. It just crashes. There's no crash logs, or at least not that I know of. So yeah, that being said, like, I ultimately decided to just stick with Unity for this project. And if you guys have any solutions on how to fix the issue, please let me know, you know, because I'd love to use Godot for my projects, but I mean, that's just not what it is right now. So as always, that is pretty much it for today's devlog. We created an attack component and we created an attack system. And yeah, I will see you guys next time.